The 2024 presidential race has flipped ever so slightly back in favor of former President Donald Trump, according to prediction markets. Trump has a 50% chance of winning compared to Kamala Harris's 49% chance, with a 1% chance, of course, of something else crazy happening. In all effects and purposes, though, these numbers point to a toss-up. It's essentially a coin flip as to who wins this race in November. Now, these overall numbers reflect which candidate the betting public thinks will secure the Electoral College, which is ultimately determined by just a couple of competitive states pushing one candidate over the necessary 270 electoral votes. So how do the two contenders fare then in the key battleground states? The prediction market site, Polymarket, also has individual markets with the latest odds for Trump and Harris in each state, which is what we'll be using to fill out this interactive electoral map. The first thing we'll do here is label all of the states in which Republicans and Democrats have a better than 90% chance of winning. The safe states for Kamala Harris include Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii, New Mexico, Colorado, Minnesota, and Illinois. Then here in the Northeast, New York, Maine's 1st Congressional District, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and D.C., Washington, D.C. Now, Harris is expected to win each of these states and the district by a very comfortable margin, just as Biden did by at least 7 points each in 2020, and they provide her with a solid foundation of 206 electoral votes. For Trump now, his solid red states are Alaska, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, North and South Dakota, Nebraska statewide, and the 1st and 3rd congressional districts here, Kansas, Oklahoma, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, and West Virginia. Now back here on our map, these states provide Trump with 148 electoral votes. He carried them all by at least 8 percentage points in 2020. So there are 184 electoral votes now left up for grabs on our map across the 12 states that may be in play for either candidate come November, though most of them do hold a certain amount of lean toward either candidate. Let's go ahead then and label our likely states now, where Trump or Harris have between an 80 to 90% chance of winning. These will be marked down in the second darkest shade of blue and red, indicating that one candidate is heavily favored, but an upset is not out of the question. For Donald Trump, that includes Florida. He is heavily favored to keep the Sunshine States in the Republican column for a record 4th straight election cycle. With 30 electoral votes, the 3rd most in the nation, Florida was for a long time synonymous with the term swing states, but is now a strongly Republican-leaning state after Trump carried it by an even larger margin in 2020 than he did in 2016, 3.4%. And even more recently, in the 2022 midterms, Republicans, Governor Ron DeSantis and Senator Marco Rubio, were both re-elected by more than 15 points each. Polymarket currently has Trump with an 86% chance of winning here in Florida. Now back on our map, the emerging battleground state of Texas is also likely for Trump. 40 electoral votes here, the second most of any state. Joe Biden did receive 46.5% of the vote in Texas in 2020. That was the most for a Democrat since 1976. But even as urban areas like Dallas and San Antonio here that you see here have trended left over the last couple decades, the heavily Hispanic and right-trending Rio Grande Valley here in South Texas has dampened Democratic hopes of flipping it blue anytime soon. Again, looking at the odds over on Polymarket, Trump has an 87% chance of winning here right now. Those are his best odds in the 3 likely states here, though together they do lift him up all the way to 218 electoral votes, up and ahead of Harris's 206 from her safe states. Now let's fill out the 3 likely blue states for the vice presidents. First, the Commonwealth of Virginia, 13 electoral votes at stake here. Biden did become the first Democrat since 1944 to carry the Commonwealth by a double-digit margin, 10 points here in 2020. The growth and diversification of Northern Virginia, Nova, including the DC suburbs here, combined with sliding suburban support for Trump across the rest of the state, enabled Biden's victory in 2020 without his campaign even spending all that much time there. Yet, the polling for Biden had been subpar, to say the least. At the time of his withdrawal, he only led Trump by 1.3%, based on 23 polls, with several of the most recent surveys before he dropped out again showing Trump in the lead or in a tied race. But now with Harris in the race, we have seen her claw back a lot of the support that Biden had lost, especially with Black and younger voters. She currently leads Trump by 3 points right now per DDHQ based on 7 polls thus far, and the latest Polymarket odds give her an 86% chance of winning in Virginia at this point in time. Now, Harris is also heavily favored to hold the 2 competitive New England states of New Hampshire and Maine in the Democrats' corner. Polymarket gives Democrats an 80% chance of winning in New Hampshire and 86% in Maine. Joe Biden won Maine by 9 points in 2020 and New Hampshire by 7, after they were both decided by less than 3 points in 2016. Now, neither state has voted for a Republican since at least the 2000 election, and it would ultimately take a very good environment for Trump to flip either state, the kind of environment that we may have been trending toward had Biden stayed in the race. But again, this is where Kamala Harris stops the bleeding, so to speak. And then finally, we can also assign Nebraska's 2nd congressional district a likely blue rating as well. Taking a look over at the market via Polymarket here again, we see Democrats with an 83% chance of winning. Joe Biden did carry this district by 7 points in 2020. Nebraska 02 is left trending as it's pretty much entirely based around the city of Omaha, and therefore is very urban and has a large number of college graduates, which are 2 demographic factors that have favored Democratic candidates over the last 2 decades. Now, the 7 states remaining are the 7 states that entered this cycle as the core swing states, the key battlegrounds projected to be the most strongly contested by both campaigns and ultimately wind up as the closest in terms of margin for a second straight cycle. They were each decided by less than 3 points in 2020 and flipped from Trump in 2016 to Biden in 2020. That is with the exception of Nevada, which went blue in both elections, and North Carolina, which voted for Trump twice. Now, before we look at the latest probabilities here, please take a second to consider subscribing to my channel down below. It's completely free and it does help me out tremendously. According to my channel analytics page, nearly 90% of my viewers are not subscribed. Let's try and get that down to 50-50 by election day. Alrighty, neither Trump or Harris currently hold a better than 70% chance of winning in any of these states, so they'll all be marked down either as tilt or pure toss-ups. The only race here left on our map where either candidate has a clear edge is Maine's 2nd congressional district, as it leans towards Trump. Both Maine and Nebraska are unique in that they split their electoral votes, awarding 2 to the statewide winner and then 1 per congressional district. Trump won this rural northern 2nd district in Maine by comfortable margins in both 2016 and 2020, and he has a 71% chance of winning right now, according to Polymarket. Alrighty, let's get on with the tilt states now, where the chance of winning for either candidate is between 55 and 70%. For Trump, that includes 3 states across the Sun Belt region: North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. Starting in North Carolina, 16 electoral votes, it gained 1 in the census. Trump has a 60% chance of winning, according to Polymarket. Now, North Carolina has not elected a Democrat to federal office since Barack Obama in 2008, as the GOP has now won the last 3 presidential and last 5 Senate races, each by less than 6 points, positioning the Tar Heel state as a consistently purple, yet Republican-leaning state. Now, Decision Desk HQ and The Hill just released a 2024 poll average for North Carolina that shows Harris leading by just over 8 points, 1.1%, based on 10 polls, 48% to 46.9%, Harris has now led in 2 of the last 4 polls released in North Carolina, with the other 2 showing a tied race. She has spent a lot of time on the ground here, and it certainly appears that the Democratic Party is making a concerted effort to put it back in play. But again, as per Polymarket's latest odds, Trump still has a 60% chance of winning, as the fundamentals are still too strong for Republicans here in the states, and it does have a history of overestimating Democrats in polling. As for Georgia and Arizona, the 2 closest states in 2020, they were both decided by less than half a point in Biden's favor, 0.2% in the state of Georgia, and then 0.3% in Arizona. As while Republicans had long dominated statewide elections in both states, their 2 major metro regions, Phoenix here in Maricopa County in Arizona, and Atlanta in Georgia, have grown and diversified at a faster rate than anywhere else in the nation, and have thereby shifted hard to the left over the last decade, lifting Democrats to victory not only in the 2020 presidential race, but in several major down-ballot contests for Senate and for governor as well. Now, here in 2024, the polls between Biden and Trump did show Trump making gains among young and minority voters, 2 key demographics in both states, and the top-line averages reflected those trends, as he led Biden by 4 points in Georgia before he dropped out, and then by 5.7%, so almost 6 points here in Arizona. Now, with Harris in the race, the polls are much more competitive, as she does trail Trump by just 1/10 of a percentage point in Arizona, based on 15 polls, and then by 2.7% in Georgia, also based on 15 polls. Taking a look back over at Polymarket, it does give Trump an edge in both states right now. Republicans have a 56% chance of flipping Arizona back into the GOP column, and then a 62% chance in Georgia, which is actually even better than in North Carolina, surprisingly enough. Together with North Carolina, Arizona, and Georgia do lift Trump all the way up to 262 electoral votes now, 8 shy of that magic number, 270. As for Harris, her tilt states include 2 of the 3 states making up the core Rust Belt trio, Wisconsin with its 10 electoral votes, and Michigan with 15 electoral votes. Over on Polymarket, she has a 56% chance in Wisconsin, and then in Michigan, Harris has a 61% chance. Now, these numbers do correlate with the polling data, as these are Harris's 2 best polling states right now, and for what it's worth, they were also Biden's best states in the polls as well before he dropped out. The vice president currently leads the former president in Wisconsin by 3.3% based on 19 polls per Decision Desk HQ in the Hill, 49.5% to 46.2%, and then over in Michigan, she's up by 1.9% based on 15 polls, 48.3% to 46.4%. Now that is interesting because Wisconsin does typically vote a point or 2 to the right of Michigan. It was Biden plus 0.6 in 2016 compared to Biden plus 2.8 in Michigan. Together, though, again, they lift Harris up to 251 electoral votes now, 10 behind Trump in the race to 270, with just 2 states remaining, Pennsylvania and Nevada. According to prediction markets, both states will be placed down in the pure toss-up category. The Keystone State, Pennsylvania, gives Trump a 51% chance of winning, slightly better than a coin flip, while Nevada has him at 54%. So going back over to our electoral map, the current Electoral College projection, according to prediction markets, is Kamala Harris 251, Donald Trump 262. Neither candidate hits 270, though Trump is the ever so slight favorite, as he does hold a narrow advantage in both of our toss-up states. As always, you can let me know in the comments what you think of this map, as well as any other videos you would like to see in the future. Shout out to my channel members on screen here. Thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to become a member, go ahead and click the join button below this video to receive exclusive perks. Make sure to subscribe to my channel down below again so you don't miss future content, and please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. You can check out more content from my channel here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.